Our Chief for Yourself guest used to sit on the curb and wonder how to buy his next high, never dreaming his life would turn out so satisfying and good. But Billy Menace turned his life around, and today he'll talk about ways to make changes that produce the same results.
This is Chi for Yourself. John's guest today is Billy Menace, author of Kickass Recovery.
Great to have you with us today, wherever you happen to be in the world at this moment. The world being a pretty crazy place these days, so I appreciate your taking the time to join us. And just about every story in the news or anywhere else has to do with the pandemic and all of the fallout that that's causing and keeping people at distance from each other. There's another story, though, that has been pushed off the front pages, and it isn't going to be going away. Not now, probably not anytime soon. There is no vaccine for it. And the problem I'm talking about is addiction. It's been, as I said, pushed out of the news, but there are still problems as millions struggle with their addiction. The damage toll to society well into the billions every year. Our guest today is Billy Menace. Am I saying that correctly, Billy? Billy Menace?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, good. Billy's a recovering addict, blogger, motivational speaker, musician, and dad to 3 daughters. That keeps you busy. Billy Menace, also the author of Kickass Recovery, From Your First Year Clean to the Life of Your Dreams. And we were talking a little bit earlier about how crazy things have gotten. You're in a university town, New Paltz. I think you're still there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I got to imagine that's pretty quiet right now. I mean, with students gone, and it's not a big town, right? I mean, it's a town without the students is pretty quiet.
It is. I mean, it's not big, but it's got a lot of congestion normally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's gone, you know.
What kind of an atmosphere is that for a recovering addict to live in? Any recovering addict, whether you or anyone, does that give you too much time to think?
Well, not really, because I don't know how to put this in the most delicate way possible. A lot of recovering addicts are people in essential jobs. And so a lot of us are still out there working. But what it's doing is a lot of us rely on meetings. This is what we use to keep ourselves focused, most of us. And there's no more meetings.
Mm-hmm.
There are Zoom meetings, but they leave a little bit to be desired, we'll say.
Yeah. Obviously, you don't have the contact and the personal touch that a normal meeting has. Are there any other problems associated with that kind of a meeting? Maybe one that would lead to more, I don't know, slipping back into those bad habits?
It's challenging. I don't know statistically who's relapsing at this point, but it's challenging because for a few reasons. A lot of these meetings, well, I've been on an international one lately, which brings in, a couple hundred people. It's a strange situation. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week meeting that's just continually going, and it's all over. Any English-speaking countries are allowed to be involved. The problem is, like you said, there is something, I don't know, if you're a person who has ever been to church and you know that feeling of leaving church and having had this spiritual awakening or this spiritual relief where you leave and you feel like you're ready to take on the week, that's what you get from being in a meeting with human beings. The hugging, the being in close contact, that none of that's there. You're just looking at a bunch of Brady Bunch boxes, and that's what you got now.
Yeah. Your book really shows us how you were able to work through your addiction and realize your dreams. It's a great story. And I guess you didn't have the best home life either. Your parents weren't exactly supportive. I think nuts was the word that came into play.
That's about, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, yeah. Was anyone in your environment supportive?
I had friends growing up, just as eccentric as myself, other artists, other musicians that, yeah, it was like us against the world. So I had that, but not much in the way of mentorship.
Hmm. I know how tough, well, obviously growing up by itself can be tough, but when you have dreams and you're thinking about them, maybe even talking about them, that can present some problems too. I was 8 years old when I realized what I wanted to do with my life. What kind of dreams did you have as a kid?
I wanted to be a rock star.
Of course.
That was since I was a child. That was it.
Well, of course, you are a musician, so you're still playing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Not many gigs these days. They all got
Yes.
canceled.
There's a section in the book that asks, why were you getting high in the first place? What do you see as your main reason?
My main reason, I think, is like a lot of people's reasons. It's a balm for childhood trauma most of the time.
Yeah. And you, I don't want to call this old school, but it is kind of old school. You dealt with what used to be known as a dealer, right? I mean, that was your main access to drugs at first. Someone
Yeah.
was dealing. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't opioids or anything like that, like we're seeing today. It wasn't prescription drugs that you find around the house or that you had prescribed to you. Did those ever come into play?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um, I wasn't very discerning about what I was putting in my body.
Uh-huh.
If it
Yeah.
could change my mood or my mind, if it was a mood or mind altering substance, any kind whatsoever, it was game.
I like that you write about the importance of doing the inner work. And with all the drug craziness in your life, you still had a sense of direction. But what do you say to addicts who tell you, I have no idea what I want to do with my life?
Yeah, I addressed that in one of my chapters with finding your calling. Where a lot of times if you don't know exactly what you were meant to do, or I've heard this from people before where it's like, I don't know what I don't know what I'm here for. I can't figure out why I'm here or what my purpose is. I do give certain exercises that help people kind of hone in on that. Yeah, I mean, anything from like using your envy, which is like going deep into yourself and think about the things that make you envious about others. So if you see, for instance, you see somebody playing guitar, you see somebody playing piano and singing in a bar, and you think to yourself, man, I wish that was me. I guess the whole purpose of my book is to say that can be you.
Hmm. Now that's, I guess, the what. And there's a section in the book called Name Your Why. What are we saying when we say our why?
Why? Why do you want to live a better life? Why do you want to live a life of your dreams? What is it that's driving you toward that? For me, in the book, obviously it was wanting to be a father to my children, wanting to be a responsible father to my children.
Now, do your kids, do they know about your past, or do they know much about your past?
My 19-year-old, of course, knows. My two little ones, no, they're not old enough to understand that yet.
Um, you speak to addicts in jails and at churches. What are some of the talking points you take with you that you stress in these talks?
It all began when I would go into the county jail, and I think by the standards of the 12-step program, I was supposed to go in there and speak about the 12-step program. A lot of times I would just improvise and riff all on my own, and because I could kind of feel what was happening in the room and what was getting the people interested and what was getting the guys interested, and it all began by telling my story, and and then I told how I went from, being a $300 a week cab driver to an $1,100 a week truck driver, and I noticed such a positive response that I just honed that story, and I got it. I it became my story that I would tell, and it always left people with inspiration and happiness and thoughts for the future.
Now, when they talk to you, are you seeing a kind of a common thread? Are there some things that they're saying that are pretty common? What-
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that a lot of the time when I'm packing up my stuff and getting ready to leave, they'll stand there waiting to talk to me, and they want to know. I mean, it's what inspired me to write the book, because they want to know the mechanics of how I did what I did. They don't just want to know, the overall inspiring story. How do I get out of this jail in 2 weeks from now, when I get out, and do what you did? And so that's where that came from.
Yeah, yeah, and the book is a really great example of that, of the steps taken. Your program, as I see it, is one of action. It's not theory, you know what I mean? It's not just stories. It's taking action. And um, man, I could talk about this for days, but you seem to follow universal law, and how actions will affect thoughts, affect your results. How important is that to you? I know you've talked about things like law of attraction, but you seem to really live it.
Yes, a lot of it. I mean, a lot of it can be hokey. I understand that a lot of people are a little bit put off by it, because there's this part in the movie The Secret where they
Yeah,
say, if you could just imagine your hands around that steering wheel of that
yeah,
Ferrari, soon that Ferrari is gonna be your. Okay, so we know that that's a little bit over the top. However, in this very room, I had a vision board over there, and I would do my exercises in the morning, and I would stare at that vision board, and I would see that book. I would see that book on the shelf in Barnes and Noble. And I was getting rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter. And every morning I would look at that vision board, and I would imagine that book on the shelf. I would go to Barnes and Noble into the self-help section, and I would just imagine my book there. It's there now. Oh, I mean, if you can get in there.
yeah, true. Yeah, to me, it works if you work it. What is the problem with The Secret? Because I get a lot of pushback about that. Oh, I tried that, I read that, I listened to the CDs, nothing happened. And people, I think, are treating it like a magic lamp.
Yeah, well, here's a quick little story about that. I I I couldn't even find an agent, first of all, and I had gotten so many rejection from agents that I could tell at one point that it was getting into my subconscious. It was starting to the incessant hope that I felt was starting to wane a little bit. And I knew a hypnotist up in Woodstock, and I had a paid personal day left. So I took the paid personal day. I went up to see him, and I said, you got to help me. I'm losing my confidence, and I just keep getting rejected. And I know, in other words, you cannot stop even when you are sure you are barking up the wrong tree and it's not going to happen. You got to get right up to that point and then go a little bit further. And then
Mhm,
that's when you get what you're looking
mhm. I know gratitude is an important part of what we do on this show, and you discuss gratitude in Kickass Recovery. Thank you for that. How important is gratitude in the overall recovery process?
for. It's extraordinarily important in recovery, and it's extraordinarily important in life in general. Um, I was just talking about this the other day with a woman friend of mine. Uh, yeah, I mean, you're there's an expression grateful addicts don't use, and that's an important expression. I thought it was just some platitude when I first got in the program, and I just kind of shrugged it off a little bit. Um, it's true. If the people who wind up relapsing and using, most of the time, have lost sight of you know what it the freedom of not having to use, the freedom of not living a life where you're using against your own will every day. If you lose sight of that, of the joy of that, you will go back out and use.
Yeah, it makes sense. You write openly about your dealings with women, and you say you love sex. Was sex an addiction for you too?
Uh, I don't think necessarily that I had a sex addiction. I think I had a relationship addiction. You know, I would go from one to the next to the
Yeah.
next to the next.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you take the the bigger picture view of all of that, what it really comes down to is I was always looking for something to fill the void, whether it's, you know, relationships or drugs or just whatever I could use to fill that void, because it takes energy to do it without any of those, you know, external sources.
Hmm. Hmm. The 12-step program, we talked about that just a minute ago, and so many people who've gone through it give it all of the credit. You have some issues, I think, with 12-step. Talk about where you differ with the program.
Okay. Well, essentially, I love the 12-step program, and I probably would not be alive without it. So I'll start with that caveat. But I'll say, what we're dealing with right now is a little bit different with the opioid crisis. It's a little bit different than things were 15 years ago or 10 years ago. People are dying in droves at this point. We can't. The whole 12-step philosophy is abstinence, and a lot of these people who are dying right now could have been saved if they were allowed to pursue a course of medication assisted treatment. It's called MAT. Some sort of medication that will help them from going out and using, whether it's, you know, Suboxone or methadone or whatever. That's very against the 12-step program. But I believe it saves lives, and in certain instances, I think it's essential that we open up ourselves to that possibility for people.
Hmm. I was in an adult children of alcoholics group, and to me, you know, there was a lot of sharing and a lot of good stuff, but I, I didn't feel like there was enough reason, I guess, to take action. And again, I'm going back to that word action. There's a tendency too that I found to give this up, to give up the problem to, let's say, a higher power. And I'm thinking, well, okay, if I give it up and I admit to being this creature of with no hope, then I'm really, I don't know, am I really making progress? How do you feel about higher powers, and what do you think about a concept like God?
Um, I think my concept behind God is, once it becomes something that I'm able to wrap my head around, it's no longer God. So to me, it's this entity that I don't even really understand. I don't think I'll ever understand, but I'm comfortable with not totally understanding it.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'll refer to it as the universe. You know,
Yeah.
whatever feels comfortable when I'm in a conversation about this sort of thing. There is something that exists. I am sure there is something that exists. I just, like I said, when it becomes something that you can put in a box or give a white beard and a cane to, it no longer has the power of what it's supposed to be.
Right. And you've said change your thoughts, change your life. And I think of people like Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe Dispenza and Tony
Mm.
Robbins, who had a great influence on you. What would you take away from all of the Tony Robbins influence?
Jeez, I mean, he he was like an antidepressant for me for many years. I mean, um, I had once, I remember telling somebody once that there were times during the struggling initial years of my recovery where I would just put his stuff on, and I had heard it 150 times already, but just the tone of the voice and and, and something that was coming out of those speakers was was making it so that I could function during the toughest period of my recovery and of my life. Um, I can't. It's an esoteric thing that I can't really explain, but something about those theories and those principles that made me feel like I had a shot in life.
And Tony Robbins is, I guess, kind of a tough love guy. He's kind of in your face. You used a life coach. Was your life coach the same way?
She was a Tony Robbins life coach.
Oh, take that. Oh, geez. These these virtual meetings. I don't know if you've had contact with a lot of the people to discuss their effect. Are they the future? I mean, are they going to be effective? Are they going to cause more problems?
That is a really, really good question. It's it's been very useful to me because I have a very busy schedule, extraordinarily busy schedule. My work life is 12 to 13 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then I have children on the weekends. And when I drop off the children, a lot of the time I was playing gigs. Um, it was very difficult for me to get to meetings. Now I can wake up in the morning feeling a little and turn on my Zoom program and be at the meeting. It's 24 hours a day,
Hmm.
7 days a week. I could listen to somebody sharing, and if I needed to, I could share myself. Um, that's beautiful, and I love that. Like I said, there's an X factor that's missing, and it leaves you feeling a little bit off.
Yeah, I guess it is what they call, and I really don't like this phrase, but the new normal. So I guess we'll
Okay,
have to.
yeah.
You get tired of hearing that 1,000 times a day. The conditions that we're seeing now, job prospects are thin, people laid off all over the place. That's got to kick up the addiction numbers. No.
Yes, yes, I do believe that it's starting to exacerbate the problem a little bit right now.
Yeah. And as far as counseling, are you okay with the garden variety counseling? You know what I mean? Are there some things that counselors could do? Just I'm talking about, I don't mean like the high school guidance counselor types, but I'm also not talking about the Tony Robbins types. Just someone who passes him or herself off as a counselor. What would you like to add? What would be?
You mean like a drug counselor?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah. There's something important there. I mean, those people are trained usually
yeah.
to to help you to help the average person struggling with addiction um, to look at areas that they don't generally look at,
Mm.
and by observing these things and by working them out with somebody like a counselor, um, it helps to open up certain, you know, it helps to alleviate certain problems by looking at why, you know, why certain behaviors take place in a person's life.
Now you've relapsed. You talked about that in the book. What was
Hmm.
that like for you?
Jeez. It was awful. It was really awful because my body kept using drugs, and every time I got high, I'm not even exaggerating. Every time I got high, this was every single day. The initial reaction was burning in my throat and burning under my eyes. And I felt like I was just going to start crying hysterically every single time. And I
Oh,
couldn't understand what was going on. In retrospect, I knew too much for it to be fun anymore. So I
yeah.
was I was using against my will, and it was killing me emotionally and spiritually.
Yeah, because like you wrote in the book, it starts out as fun and very quickly it becomes anything but. One last question, I'll let you go. If you were talking to someone who's really having problems and wants to clean up his life, what one thing would you say? First thing you would say to him right now to hopefully get him on his or her way.
Try to picture yourself not having to use for one day. And you know, meditate on that for a minute and then take it from there.
Visualization and meditation. Do you have a practice, by the way? Do you have a regular meditation practice? I know
Oh
you're
yeah.
busy.
I
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to be as serene without it.
Your
Remember, I'm
website.
a truck driver, man.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Very stressful out there.
The driving meditation. Your website is billymanis.com. The book is Kickass Recovery, your first year clean to the life of your dreams, from our guest, Billy Manis. Thank you for everything you are doing. And if you have any other projects or anything you'd like to come back and talk to us about, I'd really like to hear that. It'd be great.
Thanks, John.
All right.